Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle joining me on the B.Block podcast. Jay, man, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you for joining me, man.
B.Scott, I appreciate you having me on, brother.
No doubt, no doubt. I'm talking to you now before you travel to Indy for the NFL scouting combine, part of your duties with the Houston Chronicle as a beat writer. So we're going to talk about that. I do want to get just kind of pick your brain a little bit for what you're going up there to watch, what type of stories you expect to write, that sort of thing. But before we do that, man, you got the Charlotte roots, the North Carolina roots, and the video on the internet right now is my man Cam Newton. And this let me just say this, qualify this. Cam Newton is my favorite college football player ever.
Yeah.
And I say that as somebody that grew up in the same neighborhood as Vince Young. Like I love Cam Newton that much, man. Like I'm a Cam Newton guy now.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he's become a little bit of a character in media these days.
Definitely a character for sure.
Yeah, but I'm a staunch Cam Newton defender. One thing I would never do, never even consider to do, is to swing on the man.
That man is 6'5", 240 something pounds. Like,
bro, like, what did you think when you saw that somebody actually really wanted to try it with Cam Newton at his own event? Like in Atlanta, I couldn't even believe what I was seeing, man.
Yeah, man, it's unfortunate because he put on these youth camps for the kids, man. He tries to give back. He's a regular in doing that, and I got friends. It's funny that you brought this up because one of my friends, while I was on my walk, was showing me videos, some of these extra scenes because I saw it yesterday, but I saw some other scenes of like one of the dudes who Cam beat up because he had two dudes slinging him around. One of the dudes was a grown man talking smack that he. I can't remember exactly what he was saying about Cam.
He said he couldn't throw.
Said he couldn't throw. Like a grown man at a 7-on-7 event for high school kids. It's supposed to be a good cause, starting drama, trying to jump Cam and can't even do it. Like, how you gonna jump the man and then get swung? And it's 2-on-2 or 3-on-1, whatever it was. It's just like, I don't know. To me, that's just tacky. That's just like lame to me. I hate that somebody would come up in this event and try to do that, but I'm glad Cam held his own. And to me, that's just stupidity, really, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it showed me too, like, because, we've seen videos before of like kids trash talking Cam at different type of events like this. Like I've seen that in past years.
Yeah.
Since Cam's career is kind of going, going in the other direction, I would say. And I always thought like people, kind of comment on the kids, like, man, what's wrong with these kids these days? I'm like, man, look, that's learned behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
These kids are learning that from somewhere, and it's really like the adults that be the problem a lot of times. When you look at it, it's like, nah, kids are just saying stuff that they hear and are being influenced by somebody else. And like you said, man, this is tacky, but also to me, unwise.
Yes.
Like, bro, I don't know what Cam Newton would have to do. It's gotta be worse than throwing a football. Or what does Cam Newton have to do for me to be like, yeah, you know what? I want to fight him.
Yeah, at least if you're going to challenge somebody way bigger, at least know how to fight.
Yeah.
Like, this man obviously had his head down on the ground being slung and have no shot at all.
Yeah.
Like, don't be stupid to challenge somebody much bigger than you and you don't know how to fight. That's a lose-lose situation, and he lost that situation very badly. But it's just like I just hate to see it because everybody want to go viral. They just want to do it for the fame. They just want to make a quick buck and have the attention. But in the end, they just look stupid in the end. Maybe a few of their little friends who were in on it were excited for them, but the whole majority of people who realize the situation and what they're trying to do think they look stupid. And I don't know. It kind of gets on my nerve. Like, leave this man alone. Let him do what he wants to do. Let him give back. Let him try to have a career if he, still has a chance at doing that. Like, let him be. Can he be? Like,
bro, I may leave this earth before I ever go viral. But the thing that I won't go viral for is getting these dreadlocks slung around. And you ain't gonna see nobody doing that to me because I'm a brother like me tending to his own business. I don't have them kind of problems. You will never, ever see it. But I think you do raise a good point about Cam that I think goes overlooked a lot of times because of the hats and the comments and the cigar. He's a personality. He's a figure, right? But people don't really pay attention to, I think, a lot of the like groundwork that he's really done. You know, the type of the community give back and outreach and just caring about people. Like, I don't think people realize that about Cam because of all of the flashiness or whatever else it may be. Like, he's actually dude is actually a real person. You know?
He's a top notch dude. Like, I think he was a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. Like you mentioned, the things he used to give back every Thanksgiving. I think he still does. He gives back to the kids, tries to give kids opportunities. CJ Stroud even mentioned it on when he went on this podcast that he looked up to Cam Newton. Cam Newton kind of gave him some confidence when he was in high school. So dude tries to do the right thing. He might be a little bit flashy. He might be a little bit arrogant for some people, but let him be. Everybody is different. He ain't bothering nobody.
Yeah, man, for sure. So since you mentioned CJ, and obviously, I guess maybe the last time we saw each other maybe would have been on Radio Row a couple of weeks ago, or at Radio Row a couple of weeks ago. Both of us, all of us, you know, trying to talk to CJ Stroud, trying to just get as much content and interviews and, you know, do as much as we can out there. I know that you were able to at least tell CJ a little bit around Radio Row. He obviously talked to Cam Newton, did his podcast. What were you, and you wrote about this as well for the Houston Chronicle. I encourage the viewers and listeners, the audience, to go check that out at the Houston Chronicle, all of Jonathan's work there. But give us a little synopsis of what you were able to glean and learn from at least what that experience, because we've been talking to CJ all season. We, you know, have a little bit of a working relationship with him, but what were you able to glean from what that experience was for him?
Yeah, I knew CJ had, he was like, his star was growing like around the country. Like, people knew of him after the year that he had, but I didn't realize to the magnitude it had grown. And that was my goal, to kind of see how people viewed him outside of Houston. And so I wanted to follow him around for a few hours as he did Radio Row. And I talked to him a little bit, and he was telling me, like, yeah, it wasn't like this last year, like going around, because he had went around Radio Row when he was, after he had finished Ohio State. But you know, everybody just wanted a piece of him, and I was curious at how this could potentially change who he is going into year two. Like, the expectations are going to be higher. I mean, is it going to change the person he is? You see him going to every little single event, NBA All-Star Weekend, celebrity softball game, being seen with Amber Rose, even though, you know, that turned out not to be a relationship. You know, that's another story. But
you know what? Since you mentioned that, though, like, the thing about it is, like, you talk about how he's viewed outside of Houston and just how different it is, how, like what he mentioned to you, how different it is from a year ago.
Yeah,
that's just a perfect example of it.
Yeah,
I wonder, and I know this happened after Radio Row, but I do wonder for him if he could have foreseen, like, a year from now or a year ago, that, hey, man, not only am I going to be driving Amber Rose to her hotel room, or to her hotel, but people are going to fixate on it, and it's going to be a spectacle, just the sight of us walking together, because it's obviously she's been a star for a long time, but it speaks to his rise, because that mattered not because Amber Rose was seen, it was because CJ Stroud was seen with Amber Rose. Like, he was the A topic of the A topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think he did foresee that. He knew he was going to have success. He always believed in who he was and his ability, but he didn't see this level of fame. CJ is an interesting guy. Like, you talk to, like, his manager, Case Keenum. Like, I talked to Case Keenum, Davis Mills, and Davis Mills is the type of guy who would love to go into CJ Stroud is the type of guy that would love to go into a Walmart, Target, or HEB and go shopping and have nobody bother him, and just, like, be on his own. And I remember he did it earlier this year. But now they tell him, like, you're CJ Stroud now. Like, you can't do those things. Like, you're not a normal guy anymore. Like, we have to do that shopping for you, or we have to go to a private room when we go out to dinners. And that's going to be a big adjustment for CJ Stroud, I believe, because he's not used to that. He's getting used to it, and he's going to get used to it as his star continues to grow. But that just speaks to the level of success he's had and how he's been able to connect with people in the outside world. A lot of people see themselves in CJ Stroud, and he seems like a regular stand-up dude, because he is. He's a genuine dude. You know this. They love his personality, what he can do. He got a swag to him too, you know. And everybody that he speaks to on the team, they gravitate towards him. He's a guy people want to follow, and his star is only going to continue to grow, and he's just going to have to handle that the right way, like many of the other greats that came before him were able to handle it.
So everything you just mentioned for me is a reason why this offseason you could argue is the biggest that the Texans have had. And we do this recency bias of everything that's big in the moment is the biggest that's ever been. Yeah. Which I actually think is harmless and okay, even if it's hyperbole or an overreaction. I don't think it's hurting anybody. So let's just, for the sake of this discussion, call this the biggest offseason the Texans have ever had without doing the histrionics of going over every offseason that the Texans have ever had. And let's just call it that. And you wrote a piece on the Houston Chronicle, and I think this is, one of the points that you mentioned on the 3 moves that the Texans need to make this offseason. You mentioned, and we'll get to this, spending more in free agency, really committing to building a contender. I think the last few years, Jonathan, and you've covered the last 2 teams, the last 2 seasons, and I think when you got here, a lot of some of the offseason, that first season might have been for the most part done, but you've covered the last 2 teams and familiar with how this team operates at this point, or has operated for the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And it's been more of a, hey, let's just put a competitive squad together. Let's just put the most competitive squad that we possibly can together, which is a very general way of looking at it. Yeah. But now I think they've progressed to a point of having some foundational pieces and hitting on a quarterback, hitting on their head coach finally. They got a couple of pieces on defense that are locked in on rookie deals, and Will Anderson Jr. and Derek Stingley Jr. Mm-hmm. I would even throw Christian Harris as a revelation last year, as somebody who you could put in a conversation. He's somewhere close to that conversation as a foundational piece for sure, based off of how he played toward the end of the year. I think this offseason is different in terms of not just trying to put a competitor together, but you already feel like you got a competitor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now you're trying to take that next step, elevate a little bit, and you wrote about 3 moves that the Texans absolutely need to make this offseason. Let's make the case for them.
Yeah.
Start with the first one. You think that the Texans should re-sign Jonathan Grenard? This is a talking point.
Yeah.
So make the case. I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, you look at, in the NFL, you have to have a great pass rushing team. You got to have a team that gets to the quarterback. Jonathan Grenard was their leading sack guy. Young, 26 years old. He'll be 27 next season, so he's still in his prime. Got at least 2 more years in his prime, at least. Maybe 3, 4, and could possibly stretch it to 5. Who knows? But if he stays healthy. But I just think you have to have a good pass rusher. And to me, of the free agent pass rushers, Jonathan Grenard is the best among the free agents. I don't think he'll cost a ton. He might be somewhere between 17 and 24. But to be honest with you, if you look at the top guys, Nick Bosa making $34 million, that's not that bad. And with the increase in cap space, that gives you some flexibility to be able to sign him. And DeMeco Ryans has talked about it. He needs to strengthen his defensive line. I think where you strengthen the defensive line is you add depth as well. I think Sheldon Rankins is a good defensive tackle too. And he's one of the better free agents out there. There are some good ones who are going to be super pricey. I think if the Texans don't re-sign Sheldon Rankins, then they need to get a better option than him. But, yeah, I think it starts with Jonathan Grenard. He was your best pass rusher, had 15 tackles for loss. He was huge, and he's still in his prime, and I think he'll only help the Texans moving forward. So I think you have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually with you 100% on that. The only thing because you mentioned Sheldon Rankins, mm-hmm. I do wonder because look, Jonathan Grenard had a great season.
Yeah.
Sheldon Rankins had a really good season, and I think earned himself some sort of payday. We're obviously not talking about the same level of Jonathan Grenard, but I do wonder if, based off of both of those guys' play, if they've outpriced themselves or outpriced the Texans in being able to get both of them. Like if there will be a business decision that's got to be made off of, hey, which guy do we feel like we could better replace, or which guys play do we feel like less that we could live without or be without, So they got to weigh that. But I do agree with you on the Jonathan Grenard point. Like, double-digit sack guys, you can find them, but it's not like they just grow on trees. They're not everywhere.
Yeah.
And I felt this way ever since they drafted him, like kind of undersized for his position, but has been, whenever he's healthy, has been productive. Like he's never sucked.
No.
Like Jonathan Grenard at no point has ever been bad at football, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
Like at Florida, I know he started at Louisville, but when he went to Florida, like that year, he led the SEC in sacks and tackles for loss.
Yeah.
And they ended up being able to get him in the 3rd round. And I feel like ever since he's been with the Texans, whenever he's healthy, he's been productive. The issue, and I'm you can't really avoid it, but the issue is the injury stuff. But you see what you get when the guy is healthy.
Yeah.
I'm 100% with you. But I do wonder what other business decisions they're going to have to make along the defensive line if they go ahead and do what we're both saying they should do, and that's re-sign Jonathan Grenard.
A couple of points to that. Yeah, like you mentioned, this isn't the first time that he's had success. Like his 2nd year, he had 8 sacks and dealt with a couple of injuries. This year was the healthiest he had been. Played through that ankle injury that he had. Still had a big time year. I think it's only up for him, especially if you add a big part of Jonathan's success. Also, is the fact that he's had better talent opposite him. So like people can't really like double team Will Anderson, or they can't double team Jonathan Grenard. Like you got 2 strong options on outside. It makes you a lot dangerous, and you got 2 good guys on the inside. It makes you a lot dangerous. Now, you mentioned the Texans probably gonna have to pick and choose who they sign because of money. They're trying to figure out. I do think DeMeco Ryans, will make it a priority to invest heavily on the defensive line. So I think if you don't see Sheldon Rankin, because they'll probably weigh like, okay, Sheldon had 6 sacks. He was really good for us, helped with communication, helped improve the run defense. I don't think they're going to get worse at defensive tackle unless they just draft somebody 23rd. I think they'll either sign Sheldon or they'll sign somebody better, like Christian Wilkins, who's a little bit younger, or I think DJ Reader is a possible option. I don't know what interest they have in him, but he's out there.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they'll get worse because they know how important it is to being able to stop the run and how that's going to be crucial to them having a successful run in the playoffs. So
I actually like the way you couched that, because I hadn't really thought of it that way, but it does seem like a pretty straightforward point of, hey, they're not going to get worse along the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever they do, and we don't necessarily know exactly what they're going to do, but whether it be signing guys, drafting guys, whatever it is, they're not taking a step backwards. If like, you know what I mean? Like if whatever the cost benefit analysis of how the free agency and the offseason plays out, it's not going to be sacrifice defensive line play.
No, it's
not going to be like, and I hadn't even thought about it in that way, even though maybe I just already knew that. But that's a good way to look at it when you're thinking about how they might approach this offseason, whether that be re-signing Jonathan Grenard, being interested in some cap casualties, which is I think a real fascinating.
Eric Armstead from the 49ers. The 49ers could save a lot of money if they designate him a post-June cut. And I don't know how much it'll cost after he be cut, but he loves DeMeco Ryans. I talked to him at the Super Bowl, and I'm sure DeMeco Ryans would love to add him, whether that's as a depth piece or even as a starter. So that's potential there too, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, it's man, the offseason is so fascinating to me because I think there are going to be players that want to play with C.J. Stroud, and then of course DeMeco Ryans. I don't know about like with veterans, how much like they want to know who they're going to be playing with. They want to like the quarterback is going to matter the most to me with veterans.
Yeah,
but also with DeMeco Ryans specifically, the relationships. Yeah. Obviously the San Francisco background, but then also the fact that he did play within the last decade or so. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like he's old in football years, but he's still a really young man. Not I don't even think he's 40 yet.
He had 2 teammates on the team.
He had 2 teammates. There you go, 2 teammates on the team. Yeah, Kareem Jackson and my man Weeks, right? Yeah. So that's a good point. So like I do wonder, we did this debate or kind of a topic on the radio of like, I think it was Sean Pendergast who coined this term of C.J. Stroud spell or the D'Amico Ryans Pixie Dust? D'Amico Dust, which is I think a John Lopez thing. I don't want to. They'll get mad at me if they find out I'm giving the wrong credit to the wrong or the credit to the wrong people. D'Amico Dust or the CJ Spell. And I was like, man, there's a little bit of both at play here, depending on who we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just depending on the individual. All right, this next point. I want you to explain this. When you say spend more in free agency, the Texans should spend more in free agency. I happen to agree with this point too, but I want to hear from you. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, like when you look at the history or Nick Caserio's history, when he's had 3 off seasons with the Texans, he hasn't spent a lot in free agency, and that's because he's trying to get them out. They didn't have much in salary cap, so they have the most money they've had in his tenure. And I think, some teams tend, when they don't see themselves having a competitive team, they say, all right, we won't spend this much. We'll put a competitive team out there, and we'll save the rest to have a big free agency like next year when there might be more free agents. I think now is the time. They have the foundation, the pieces to win now. Now you have to spend. I don't think you have to cripple yourself for many years, but I think you got to spend more than what you've spent the past few years. You got to sign players, not to just because Nick Caserio's had a history of giving guys 1 and 2 year contracts, short-term rentals, see if they can prove themselves. And I think that works to some degree, but it's not sustainable. So I think they've got to sign the guys who they think are their future pieces to longer deals. Maybe that's a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, depending on the person's age. And I think that includes re-signing some of their key pieces like Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman. And I think that also means going out and finding upgrades in free agency. And I mentioned a couple of players like Azeez Al-Shaair. He's a good linebacker. Now, he played Mike for the Titans. It was good. He probably needs to improve a little bit in pass coverage, but I think he'll give you more than what Denzel Perryman could give you in pass coverage. They completely took Denzel Perryman off the field on passing downs. I think you can't have that. I think there needs to be an upgrade. Now, maybe Blake Cashman could play Mike. He played a little bit of Mike when Denzel went out. I think he's crucial. I think if you have Azeez, Blake, and Christian, you got a much better linebacker core, especially with Christian's rise. I think there's also weapons at wide receiver. And I think they still should draft a wide receiver later, maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round, because this is a deep wide receiver class. But I think there's some free agent wide receivers like Curtis Samuels who can do – because the Texans are very much trying to be what the 49ers are. And that's because that's what's working right now. That offense is killing the league. Whoever you see come from that Shanahan system, and whether it's Mikey McDaniels, Kyle Shanahan himself, who is Bobby Slowick is a disciple of that system. Whoever else, they're Mike LaFleur. They're killing it right now. And I think the Texans are very much trying to be that. And the Texans can find it might be a great value version of Debo, but Curtis Samuel can do a little bit of everything. And I think they can, in their own way, kind of create an offense that's just as explosive, if not more. And I think he's a potential option. And then I have some other guys in that story that I can't think of off the top of my head. I mentioned Eric Armstead potentially, but I just think they need to spend more in free agency and go for it instead of saving money for the future.
You had mentioned Tyler Boyd as well.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd, number 3 option, yeah.
And we talked about Christian Wilkins and DJ Reader as well as so. But let me ask you this real quick before we move on to the offense, because I do want to hit on some of those points.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned now, when we talked about Jonathan Grenard, and even now, you've mentioned both Sheldon Rankins and Blake Cashman, other guys not named Jonathan Grenard, who are free agents that played a crucial role on this defense last season.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like they should probably try to maybe run it back with a lot of these pieces and just add through the draft or add some supplemental pieces and maybe think that they get better from within. The improvement comes mostly from within on defense, it sounds like. Yeah,
for sure. I think by the time they get to the draft, those guys, I think they need to be drafting best available.
Yeah.
And I think they can fill the holes. Like Blake Cashman would be huge in my opinion. Sheldon Rankins, I think, would be a good signing. Devin Singletary, I like Devin Singletary. I don't know. The hesitancy is like, I don't know if you could get a better option in the draft. I don't know if
no, I would not doubt. I would not. I mean, maybe,
Yeah.
But I wouldn't just like stamp that. I think people talk about the running back position very irresponsibly
Yeah.
and just act like, oh, running backs are a dime a dozen. And there's some truth to it. But like when a guy shows you that he's not, that he can be just a little bit over, better than average, I
Yeah.
wouldn't take that for granted.
Yeah.
Like Devin Singletary has been a solid starting running back for now 2 different teams that went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So like I don't want to just be like, I don't want to, just because Devin Singletary is not Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, or Derrick Henry per se, I don't want to make it seem like, hey, he's just a guy. Like I think he's a little bit better than just a guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So some people who I think like, all right, so I think Steven Nelson is very good, and I think he was really good for the Texans last year.
Yeah.
But however, he is 31, and he does want to make more money than what I think the Texans will probably be willing to spend.
Yeah.
For a 31-year-old cornerback, and I'm not saying that Steven Nelson is not going to be good. I think he'll have at least a couple good more years, but when you think about Casario's history, especially with Steven Nelson, I think the Texans probably would be more likely to try to find somebody, go younger route, whether that's in the draft or whether that's in free agency. I haven't studied the free agency of a cornerback class, but I know that the draft class of cornerbacks is really good and fairly, most draft experts I've spoken to say it's fairly deep. So I think that might be a position that the Texans target in the first, second, or third round. And that might be their starter opposite of Derek Stingley if they can't reach a reasonable agreement. Just talking to Nelson, like he wanted to be paid, like, and he probably deserves to be paid, as well as he played early on and throughout his career. Like the money doesn't match up with what the production he's had over the years. So he should be paid some money, but I just don't think the Texans are going to be willing to give him that money.
Well, even late in the season, like I would say this about Steven Nelson too.
Mm-hmm.
I want this to be very clear. He's been good for them in like his entire time here.
Yeah,
he's been good for them, and then last season in particular, he played through a lot.
Yeah,
played through a lot and was productive. Like for all of the maybe mouthiness on social media, dude backs up. And I ain't never had a problem with a dude talking who could back it up.
Absolutely.
And like shout out and credit to Steven Nelson for every time he put his money where his mouth is. He's put his play where his mouth is, and I can respect that. Now, to your point though, I do think that absent of some meeting of the minds with Steven Nelson, which I think you laid it out pretty well of why that might not be the case or why that might not happen, it makes way more sense to, instead of paying when you got to prioritize what you're going to pay, it makes way more sense to invest in that in the draft if you can do it. Like it's not like you just get to say, hey, I'm just going to draft a corner, but it does seem like it would be a better idea to go younger, is I guess what I'm trying to say. It seems like it'd be a better idea to go younger at corner.
And to be honest with you, I think you can get away with an average cornerback than if you have a great pass rush rather than getting away with an average pass rush if you have a great cornerback. Like terrible, like, because a lot of what happens is predicated on how quickly you get to the quarterback. So if you can get to the quarterback very quickly, then your cornerbacks, if you don't have a great one, aren't going to be exposed as much. But if you can't get to the quarterback quickly and you have great quarterbacks, there's only but so much they can do. So I think the Texans will prioritize defensive line. I say all this to say I think the Texans will prioritize defensive line over cornerback. But who knows? Maybe Steven Nelson's side can reach a deal where he still gets, a respectable increase in pay, and the Texans kind of who knows. But Steven Nelson should get his credit. He was team captain, defensive leader, one of the hardest workers on the team. He should get the money he deserved. I'm just not 100% positive that it'll come from the Texans. I don't know.
All right, man. You also mentioned improving the running game, which we all know they got to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we were complimentary of Devin Singletary earlier in this show, rightfully so. But as we know, the plan going into last year wasn't for it to be like, hey, we're gonna have Devin Singletary like carry the load of the running game on his shoulders. He was
Yeah.
brought in to be a supplemental piece, to be a part of a team, so to speak, and he ended up being like the centerpiece of their run game.
Yeah.
The offensive line for a great bit of the year was a hodgepodge of offensive line. I don't know if I've seen injuries to an offensive line like that, or how many of us have. Maybe McClain or somebody has but it's like somebody's been around forever that's seen an offensive line be dismantled like that. But all that being said, they still need to make some improvements. And man, I think they got an opportunity here, man. Like when we talk about free agency, so there are two big names that have come up, and you mentioned spending more in free agency, right?
Yeah.
Two big names have come up. Let's just put it out there: Mike Evans and Saquon Barkley. them the stars. Them the shiny. There are some other stars, but those are the shiny pieces that everybody is talking about.
Yeah.
And this is how I look at it, Jay. I want you to tell me what you think about this. To me, the Mike Evans thing is just fun fodder and fun conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because he's Mike Evans.
Yeah.
B, because he's from the area. And C, because I think, and maybe you could make this A, but because you have a quarterback now.
Yeah.
So you have a star quarterback, and so you're like, okay, star quarterback, star wide receiver, 1 + 1 = 2. And then all of those other things that I mentioned, those couple other things that I mentioned. But I think you've laid this out as well in the Houston Chronicle of why it would be a little less feasible, not less feasible because they could actually do it, but probably not the wisest thing to do.
Yeah.
When you start doing your prioritization and risk reward analysis, all of that, like, okay, like where would this be among the priorities?
Yeah.
So Mike Evans is a fun conversation piece to me, but not necessarily like as realistic. To me, the Saquon thing is all of those things that I mentioned plus realistic. I feel like it's way more of a thing that could actually happen based off of their needs, the uniqueness of Saquon, I think. And then, of course, again, I would just throw C.J. Stroud back in there. Like, who doesn't want to play with a quarterback like that on a team like this that feels like it's on the rise and I should have mentioned this, with the money to pay you. Okay. Yeah. So tell me what you think about that. Mike Evans as the fun conversation but less realistic thing happening, and Saquon Barkley being just as fun of a conversation but a more realistic thing to happen.
I think Mike Evans is just I don't think that will happen just because like wide receiver, I think upgrading at wide receiver is very low on the Texans list of priorities. They feel like they feel like they need to just have plug-ins right now. Like they need to get another vet and maybe draft guy. I don't think they feel like they need to spend 25, 26, 27 million on a wide receiver. And I think that's how much Mike Evans is truly going to cost. Like he has the stats to back it up. Among the best in the league. I know how his side feels about things and how much he wants to be paid. So I just feel like for that reason that it'd be because you pay that much money on Mike Evans and you take away from another position. You definitely not paying on a running back if you get Mike Evans. You definitely not paying on a high pro. So I just think that's the lower end of priorities. Saquon Barkley, I think I wouldn't be surprised if they did it just because they've seen what Christian McCaffrey did for the 49ers, and Christian McCaffrey's being paid a good dollar, but just how dynamic he's been for them and how crucial he's been to the 49ers getting to where he's gotten, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they did it. Me personally, I'm not a believer in paying running backs just because of the short shelf life and that there's so many that can churn out and can get you what you get. Like that, you can get a guy in the draft and he might not turn out, but he might turn out. You can get a guy in free agency for cheap, like we saw with Devin Singletary last year. But if they truly want to improve the running game, I think I wouldn't exclude Saquon Barkley, just given what he can do on both sides. I just don't know I really don't know his market. I'm confused at his market. Like teams don't want to pay running backs, but Saquon is the top tier of the running back, so he wants to get paid. He almost sat out a whole entire year because the Giants wouldn't pay him, but teams have been insistent on not paying running backs. So I think if his price could come down, oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But I just don't know. I don't know how that's going to work out. I'm really confused about how that's going to work out.
Yeah, man. So I'm normally with you on not paying running backs the second contract. I think drafting running backs, especially if you think they're special, if they're of the Saquon ilk, or certainly of like the Christian McCaffrey ilk, like what the Falcons and the Lions did with Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. Like as somebody who watched both of those a lot in college, I was like, that ain't controversial at all to me. Drafting those cats, they're different, they're built, they're special. Okay, so like I didn't, but will I want to pay either of those cats when their Saquon situation comes around? Probably not. But to me, this is where I think it's different for the Texans. You talk about the short shelf life. Like, unless you're going to argue to me that Saquon's not going to ever be good again, like he's cooked or he's done, okay, then now we're having a different discussion. But if there's any more Saquon left, I'd bet on that. Like I'd bet on the short-term Saquon and take the risk of it not being great on the back end of it. If it means I'm maximizing my opportunities right now, because I think the difference between the Texans, and we kind of alluded to this earlier, but this is the way I look at the Texans now, is before this past season, the future mattered a lot more than the present. I don't think they would ever characterize it to us that way or actually say that, but that was the way I looked at it. Like we're building towards the future. The future matters more than the present. You want to look at some of their roster moves, the head coaching decisions. Like it felt like they were planning way into the future. Things worked out for them this past season where they hit on the quarterback, got the head coach that they wanted, were aggressive. They should deserve credit for this. Were aggressive and got a kind of a franchise cornerstone type at edge rusher. To me, now the difference is the present matters more than the future. And that's not to say that you handicap yourself for the future or that you operate irresponsibly, but I do think it means that you function more aggressively within the present of what you have right now. And that's what's a little bit different about the Saquon thing, why I'm willing to come off of my stance that's similar to yours of, hey, man, running back on the second contract. I don't know about that. Go draft you a younger one.
And then part of me also has the question, though. This part of me is also, are we like as observers, are the Texans, our fans, are they ready to totally kick the can on Dameon Pierce? Like, because we saw what he was in year one. He had a bad year two. I was talking to Devin Singletary. He said a lot of people have sophomore slumps. I wouldn't give up on Dameon Pierce just because of one bad year. Like, to me, like, can Dameon Pierce develop into something? Like, because obviously scheme was an issue with him. But with another year on his belt, with Bobby Sloak still there, can he improve? I don't know that the Texans are ready to totally give up on Dameon Pierce yet.
But that's the beauty of it, Jonathan, man. That's the beauty of it, is that give up on him for what? You know what I mean? Like, why would anybody give up on him? Like, he's on the team. He's under contract. Get him in camp. We know Dameon. Damien's going to work. Damien's going to have a good attitude. So he's not going to be an issue in that kind of way. I can't see him, like, being cut. He's just too good of a guy with too much potential, I think, to just to give up on him. So I think you've got him on the roster. The decision's gonna have to be made on Devin Singletary, if they want to bring him back. But like, him being part of a running back crew that features, somebody better than him, I don't think is the worst thing in the world. Like maybe that's what people are giving up on, is the idea that he's the main back.
Yeah.
And it might be up to him to now reestablish himself as that, to like prove that. And maybe signing a Saquon Barkley would kill that idea. But to me, I have not given up on Dameon Pierce as an idea entirely, but I do love the idea of, you got somebody as dynamic as Saquon Barkley, but then Dameon Pierce in year two of the system, having already acknowledged publicly that he needed more time with the system to get adjusted to it. He's acknowledged that publicly on our radio station, Sports Radio 610. He's done that on the post game show. and he's done it also, I think, in with other people. Like, hey man, I got to keep working. Okay, maybe he's your short yardage back, or your goal line back, or your change of pace guy. What he sort of ended up being in the middle of the season when things started to go down, and then he just kind of was phased out of the offense entirely there at the end. But maybe there's still a role for him that still includes for their running game, like this premium player in Saquon Barkley. I think a lot of the question with Saquon is, like, if you got a running back who's had health issues, who's had health questions, I get why there might be some trepidation on that. But just based off of the talent alone, it's like, man, it seems like he could be, to me, it seems like he could be the missing piece in a number of ways. Like, or I shouldn't say the missing piece because they got a lot of pieces missing, but a missing piece in a number of ways in terms of helping your run game, improve the run game as we're talking about, but also does some things that I think make you even more dynamic in the pass game as well. The way he's not Christian McCaffrey quite, but the way Christian McCaffrey does, like you said, like I think there's a blueprint for what the impact of a guy like that can be on a team.
Yeah, he's definitely dangerous in all facets of the game. Can catch the ball out of the backfield, can make people miss. So he would definitely be an instant upgrade. I think just the running back position in general, it scares people because they're the most likely guys to get hurt because they take the most beating of anybody. And I looked at the prices of running backs. Christian McCaffrey is the highest paid at $16 million per. Mm-hmm. Saquon right now is at $10 million from that franchise tag. I think he'll probably be aiming for somewhere Christian McCaffrey money, and he'll probably get somewhere a little bit less.
Yeah. I wondered too, because my thing about it was, you were talking about this with running backs, and we both hit on it about kind of how they've been devalued a little bit. Yeah. I wonder if that could benefit the Texans. Like I hate it for Saquon. I'm not trying to be a hater, but like I do wonder if on the Texans side, if they could benefit from these guys were just on a Zoom call last year talking about, man, what we got to do to get paid. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I had, sorry guys, I didn't see much like change. I ain't seen nothing happen from that. I ain't seen nothing come up like I didn't see that being like this monumental moment that changed the game. So I feel like the situation is still what it was when they had that call. And I wonder, again, not trying to be a hater, because I actually do like want guys to get paid and root for generational wealth. Like I want dudes to do well. But on the Texans side, I do wonder if they might benefit from a marketplace that is not friendly to that position.
I mean, look, Christian McCaffrey got his contract. I feel like 2021. Nobody has gotten I think it's 2021 or 2022.
I think it was 2022, but somewhere in there though. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody has outpaced him yet. Nobody has reset the market since, and that says a lot about the running back. It says a lot about how the NFL views the running back market and how they want to keep it there. I think the owners don't want to pay running backs, and teams don't want to pay running backs more. They don't want to reset the market for running back. But every other position, like wide receiver, offensive tackle, is being reset every year.
Yeah. Hey, look, I'm gonna point this out, man. And this is not. You don't have to comment on this if you don't want to, because this is before you got here. Yeah. This is before Nick Caserio got here. Okay. Mm-hmm. But every time we had this discussion, and I think about just I like Saquon as a player, I do point out that the Texans did once trade DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson and paid him like $9-10 million or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, I'm gonna say this on behalf of Houstonians, all right, as a native. I feel like on behalf of Houstonians and Texans fans everywhere, that they probably feel like it'd be a solid to them to repay them for that move by paying a dude that's actually that probably actually should be paid that amount for that. Like if you can pay 9, 10, 11, I forget exactly, it was somewhere between $9 and $12 million. So I don't want to get the number wrong, but it was more than it should have been. Yeah. And obviously they traded DeAndre Hopkins to get this guy, and then plus paid him this amount of money. Nice guy. I really hate that I'm doing this because David Johnson, I think, still lives in town. I see him every now and then. Super duper dude. All right.
Yeah.
But what the hell? Like, if they were going to do that, a lot of people probably feel like, hey, man, pony up and go get you a running back that can really.
He might have been a reason why they don't pay running backs no more. No offense to David Johnson. But.
Yeah. Hey, it could be. Could have messed it up for everybody. All right, man. Before I get you out of here, I just want to know, because we talked this thing to death about the offseason, man. What are you going out there to watch for? Scouting combine, kind of stories do you anticipate writing? And I guess maybe overall, just like the Texans' approach to the draft, I feel like it's got to be a little bit different.
So I think depending on how free agency goes, I think the Texans will likely take pick the best available, whoever they get it. I don't see them needing to trade up. I don't think they will. They could potentially trade down to get more picks, more value picks. But I'm gonna be looking at how they approach a lot of what we look at as free agency, to be honest with you, because free agency is coming up. A lot of deals going to be made, or a lot of conversations going to be made with the guys who are on the team now and their agents. I think Nick Caserio right now is working with Drew Rosenhaus on trying to see what they can do with Jonathan Bernard. I think Kaimi Fairbairn and his agent trying to figure out a deal with the Texans. And to me, the fact that they don't have a deal done already means that they're not close on where they want to be as far as price. I think Kaimi might end up being top 5 highest paid. Right now, he's top 10. And given the fact that he has success in the last 2 years, he might end up wanting to be top 5 or even set the market. And maybe that's why the Texans can't get a deal done with them. So I think we're going to probably be asking Nick and D'Amico about their approach in the philosophy and free agency and the draft and how they plan to go about things, where they stand on certain deals. I think those are going to be the biggest things. And who could potentially be that number 23 pick, whether it's a defensive tackle, cornerback, defensive end, who knows? Who's going to be that guy? Who are the guys going to stand out? I think those are going to be the biggest storylines coming in.
Yeah, man, it's dope because like last year we knew, and I said this about the draft. It's like I'm gonna take it all in, but like last year we knew what they needed. We knew what was at the top of the draft. It didn't feel like it was a whole lot of mystery to it to me, even though we had fun with the conversation. Then they ended up doing the thing. They ended up drafting the quarterback and trading up. Like it was like, oh, so that's what time we on. That's what we on. Okay, I see what's happening. And this year, obviously when you're picking later in the round, it's hard to predict how the first half, the first leg of the draft is going to go. So you don't know who the hell is going to be there waiting on you at 23. You just don't know. And so it's way harder. Like we felt like we knew that, hey, or picking at 2, either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud is going to be there. Yeah. And you should probably draft either one of those dudes, whoever is there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same thing even like with Indy at 4. It's like, hey man, y'all don't have no quarterback. Go ahead and see what see what this Anthony Richardson thing is about. He's fascinating. To me, it wasn't a whole lot of like mystery at the top end, and it might not be for those teams that are at the top end this year. Yeah. But when you're picking in the 20s, man, that's why it'll be fun to see y'all's coverage, see what y'all are doing out there. Because I think there are like at least 3 wide receivers that could go at that spot that could be interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of defensive ends or edge rushers that could go at that spot. We talked about cornerback being a spot that they could go younger and prioritize. And then, of course, maybe if there's a defensive tackle there that might interest them, that's what did I just name? 4 positions, 3 or 4 positions. To me, there's a bunch of different possibilities, and like all of them are important and could in some way like really change and improve the scene. So like I find it fascinating to see whatever it is that y'all gonna come up with, whatever it is y'all observe.
Yeah.
No doubt.
It'll be interesting for sure. Johnny Newton is an interesting name. The tight end from Georgia. Who knows if he'll fall, but I heard from evaluator that he's going to be next level type guy. He'd be, a great steal if Texans could get him at 23. The defensive tackle from Missouri is another good guy. They got a lot of good pieces.
Robinson. Yeah, right.
Robinson.
Is that Darius?
Darius Robinson. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right, man.
Some good options.
Look, man, go out there, do your thing. I've kept you way too long. I appreciate you, man, for the time, for chopping it up with me. And look, man, I'm gonna be looking forward to the coverage out there, man.
Appreciate you.
All right,
Appreciate you
man.
having me on, man.
No doubt. No doubt. No doubt. That's Jonathan Alexander from the Houston Chronicle.